I'm Linda Kenny Bodden. Now we're switching gears for a moment to discuss the doomsday cult mom, Lori Vallow Daybell. The Idaho woman, as you know, was convicted in the death of her two youngest children, Tylee Ryan and J.J. Vallow, and her husband's first wife, Tammy Daybell. That was just earlier this month.
The children of Lori Vallow, the recently convicted doomsday mother who murdered her two children in what appears to be a classic Brighamite Utah blood atonement ritual. Blood atonement is a doctrine introduced by Brigham Young in the Utah Territory, which ascribes to the principle that there are certain sins so evil and so serious that Christ's blood atonement cannot save them. Therefore, in order to save these sinning Mormons, their own blood must be spilled in a very structured ritual that usually includes slitting of the throat, disembowelment, dismemberment, and burning the blood that has spilled on the ground. It is also rumored that the blood atonement perpetrators share a goblet of the sacrificed victim's blood. And if that is the case, then one can see that this would be, again, adrenalized blood that so many other religions have ascribed to, including, unfortunately, circumcision, in which the moil, or the rabbi, after severing the foreskin of the baby's penis, will place the foreskin and the blood in his mouth to drink adrenalized blood. This somehow, I believe, interacts with the testosterone of most men and creates a euphoric feeling of being godlike. This is why I believe, my theory is that monotheism or patriarchy is the result of the testosterone interacting with the blood of these death cults. This is why we have most men, I believe, ruled by their testosterone, which we know gives them a feeling of godlike qualities when it is stimulated. And it is particularly stimulated by adrenalized blood. But if you want to just go to the more mundane studies on testosterone and men normally feel or pursue the addictive quality of the increase in the hormone testosterone. So, for example, they have done studies in which a man, when he is gunning his car, gets a spurt of testosterone and gives him that feeling of godlike qualities or euphoria. And this is why you have motorcycle gangs gun their motors and, certain things and quality, addictive quality of, gambling. It is because it stimulates or triggers a flooding of testosterone and creates a feeling of godlike and euphoric qualities. Therefore, these blood atonement rituals also produce this for these group of, shall we say, gangsters, mafia, Brighamite gangsters, who pillaged and robbed and were basically the border ruffians paid by the British oligarchy to cause havoc on the western plains of the United States in an attempt to break up the United States and recolonize it before and during the Civil War period of time during the 19th century. This is well documented history. The blood atonement ritual is that sacred ritual doctrine of Mormonism under which the atonement of Christ does not redeem an eternal or a mortal sin. To atone for this immortal sin, a sinner needs to be killed in a way that allows the blood to be shed upon the ground as a sacrificial offering, so he does not become a son of perdition. A son of perdition is a son of Lucifer or being thrown out into the outer darkness outside of God's kingdom. But also, we could also call this the Chad Daybell version of a zombie. Son of perdition equals zombie. So the blood atonement was preached and practiced by Brigham Young, the second president of the Mormon Church, exiled by Stephen A. Douglas and most of the United States outside of the United States, because Brigham Young and his band of Danite blood atonement gangsters were causing total chaos, murder, and terrorism on the western plains of the United States. A basic principle of blood atonement is that in order to atone for his own immortal sin, a man must spill his blood in order that his immortal sin might be washed from him. Of course, as you previously recall, Jesus Christ's atonement just didn't work for some women who were trying to escape from polygamy out of the clutches of Brigham Young, and many found them with their own throats slit. According to John D. Lee, a Danite Brighamite assassin and adopted son of Brigham Young, to violate the Holy Ghost or to sin against the Holy Ghost meant you were sinning or disobeying Brigham Young. Brigham Young called himself the Holy Ghost. That was code for the leader of the Mormon band of assassins. Well, similarly, Chad Daybell and his coven of witches, which I will later on discuss, also called himself the Holy Ghost. So if anybody disobeyed Chad Daybell's commands, they also could be a target of this blood atonement ritual. And as we have seen, Lori Vallow's children, Tylee Ryan and JJ, were targets of this blood atonement ritual, as, of course, Charles Vallow, who begged police in Chandler, Arizona, to please prevent his eventual murder by these blood atonement assassins. And of course, as you saw in many videos, the Chandler Police just humored Charles Vallow. And even after they investigated the murder of Charles Vallow by Alex Cox, they just let Alex Cox and Lori Vallow disappear into Rexburg to continue their blood atonement murdering. I hypothesize that many of the Chandler Police are involved with this Church of the Firstborn, which has a long history stemming back to Brigham Young and his band of Danite blood atonement assassins that marauded and terrorized Utah in the 19th century and have continued to this very day. So, let's move on to the next topic of the Witches' Coven. Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell's group appear to be a classic Witches' Coven. According to Chad Daybell, who called himself the Holy Ghost, his classic Witches' Coven was headed by himself, a head warlock, so to speak, or the Holy Ghost, and Lori Vallow, who could be considered the head witch or the head mother of darkness. This cult, this dead cult involved itself in blood sacrifices. Lori's covens of witches would do their castings and pray for their targets to be murdered and sacrificed in order to carry out this ritual, in which the zombie or the son of perdition had been invaded by a demon and the soul was in limbo outside the body. As you know, the soul could only be restored to the body and sent to heaven if the physical body that was invaded by a demon was killed and the blood spilled. So, oh, and let's not forget that on each one of these sacrifices, they had insurance, at least on the adults. So who was part of this witches' coven? Well, they are very familiar. They testified against Lori Vallow, which probably they're going to end up with some very, I don't think, very happy endings, some of them. Anyway, it's Melanie Gibb, who is one of the most loyal to Lori Vallow, the classic witch. There's Melanie Boudreau. There is the female called Pistenis, who, as you recall, could control the weather. She was also married to Alex Cox and was present when he died, or at least appeared shortly thereafter. All of these women were involved in this classic witches' coven, and I'm going to give you a definition of the witches. So this is on the online Encyclopedia Britannica. Witches' coven is a basic group in which witches are said to gather. One of the chief proponents of the theory of a coven was English Egyptologist Margaret Murray in her work The Witches' Cult in Western Europe, 1921. According to her, a coven consists of 12 witches and a devil. That would be Chad Daybell. The number is generally taken as a parody of Christ and his 12 disciples. An alternate theory stressing the Murray view of the pre-Christian tradition of witches explains the 12 as the maximum number of dancers that can accommodate a 9-foot circle. Okay. Each member of the coven is said to specialize in a particular branch of magic, such as bewitching, agricultural produce, producing sickness or death in humans, storm raising, that was Miss Pastenis assigned talent, or seduction. I wonder if that was Lori Vallow. The actuality of the coven was accepted by Montague Summers, a well-known Roman Catholic writer on witchcraft in the 1920s and 1930s, and more recently in Penthorne's Hughes in his Witchcraft, 1952 to 65. Many students of the witchcraft, however, dismiss the Murray theory, etc. Well, that's kind of a classic definition of a witches' cult, which I was raised with. It's supposedly a rather new phenomenon that was just done in the post-19th century. But this is what we consider the classic witches' coven. And yes, it's a loosely organized group that engages in these rituals, but they're also connected globally with each other through code words and through various ways of communication. So Lori Vallow would communicate and Chad Daybell would communicate with other covens, and they would engage many of these covens simultaneous rituals, which supposedly fortifies and makes their magic stronger. So there you have it. Now, I also attended a Christian conference, and when I told people I was from a Mormon background, most Christians, or many of the Christians that born-again Christians, have an actual belief and conviction that Joseph Smith was a witch. And why would that be? Well, D. Michael Quinn, a very celebrated Mormon author, wrote a book entirely accusing the Smith family of witchcraft. But if you read D. Michael Quinn's book, it is filled with absolutely no evidence. It is filled only with innuendo and gossip. And if you track down each one of his pieces of evidence, they turn out to be completely false. The most ridiculous one is that the Smith family were involved in the Salem witchcraft trials. Well, the Smith relative gave testimony to the inquisitors that he heard a big boom outside his house one evening. That was the total of the Robert Smith testimony at the Salem witchcraft. Then also, Michael Quinn says that years later, a Smith family relative found a grimoire or tarot cards or something like that. And then Quinn testifies, oh, this means that the Smith family were engaged in actual witchcraft, which is ridiculous because my children probably could find some old tarot cards and an old Ouija board in my attic that I used as gag gifts, okay? Or, parlor tricks. I mean, this does not mean somebody is actively engaged in witchcraft because they have an old volume of a grimoire. The Bible also is technically defined as a grimoire, so depending on which religion you are, people having Bibles in their attics could be accused also of witchcraft. Just saying, Islam believes the Bible to be part of our witchcraft tradition.